It is March 13th, 2021, lesson 133. I will not value what is valueless. Okay. So, I wanted to first introduce goals. Okay. So, when we have goals are most oftentimes rooted in who we are. So, based on our identity, our personality, we will be oriented to certain goals. Now, what we have learned is that we all have our personal bliss, okay? So no matter what vocation, occupation, domain we may enter, we can find some form of bliss and inner peace, internal peace, which is enlightenment, right? That's the beginning of the enlightenment stage, tier, if you want to call it, paradigm. So when we orient ourselves towards that goals, we have to meet the criteria that is necessary for us to achieve that goal. So it's almost like a video game, okay? The video game for that level to achieve whatever achievement you want to achieve, attain, whatever, is that you have to meet the criteria. So every lock is unlocked so you can open up the next level. Again, what you're doing is basically mastering yourself. So you go through the process of awareness, exploration, discovery, understanding, loving, transforming, and then self-mastery. And you do that with almost every other area of your life as you are now knowing more of yourself, as it's unveiling and revealing itself, because now the truth is revealing, which is what you are. Okay, so when you orient yourselves, you're going to have a lot of releases, if that makes sense, okay? Because for you to achieve your goal, you have to be that which you must become to receive it, okay? You will only receive that which you feel like you deserve. So when you orient yourself towards that goal, there's going to be a lot of grievances, right? There's going to be real and perceived injustices, right? And this creates drama, right? This drama is a form of victim mentality that occurs, especially as we are learning more about ourselves, okay? Because we try to justify our means why we're stuck in the positions that we're at in terms of life. And that's what drama is, right? Drama is not, you can meet people that are very dramatic, but drama is like when people are prideful, right? Like, oh yeah, and like they won't let anything go. So drama leads into the realization of your limitations, okay? So when this happens, people start getting scared. They start having these angst, existential angst, like they can't really do anything in life. And then it starts getting into this emptiness, right? This lack of self-fulfillment. Because what is occurring is that once you start realizing the problem is that you haven't given that love or that appreciation or that kindness that you've been trying to seek out in the world, then it's going to come back, okay? So you're going to be disoriented, right? And then you're going to spiral, right? So what happens is that when you take that in consideration, right, now you are falling in these patterns, okay? So you start trying to disorient yourself, not try, but you are seeking goals that aren't very valuable in terms of your own development, right? So you seek money, fame, prestige, sex, any material gains. So you see that, right? And basically, when you look at the values of the world, you're seeking sorrow, right? Because first noble truth is that life is all suffering, okay? So if you keep seeking things outside of your life, then you're going to find suffering. That's just what it is, okay? And so you start seeing that there is no satisfaction in the world, then you can understand what is the law of choice. Okay, now the choice is you either change your attitude and perception of it or you don't. Okay, it's either yes or no, and that's just as simple as it gets. You get everything or you get nothing, right? And that's what makes everything very easy for you to distinguish what is important to you, right? Because if it's temporary, if it only gives you temporary satisfaction, then it's valueless. Right? It doesn't actually have any sustainability within this realm, within your own development, okay? So you take that, right? You take that away. And when you are taking the illusion away, because only loss, right? So, for example, if you feel like when you're gaining something, someone is losing, that there's not a win-win situation, then basically that's all you're going to get back, okay? It's going to come back forth. It's going to be paid forth. Yesterday, there was this guy, like, literally at the gas station, and his car died as soon as he was pulling up. He was asking for money because he didn't have his wallet or something like that. And this guy was just like, you know, get away 6 feet, whatever. And then he's just like, oh, man, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember I had these $10 in my pocket, right, from the night before. And I was just like, hey, here, what? Like, no hesitation whatsoever. And that changed the other guy's perspective of that as well, right? Because he was like, oh, no, I have a couple bucks too. And then I didn't even think about it, right? Because it's just like you have that mentality of just giving, right? And that receives. Because now that impact is changed, right? Because like the other guy, he changed his mind, he changed his attitude towards the other guy. The other guy's like, I'm going to pay it forward. So when you have that energy, right, when you're giving, right, that's exactly where you're going to receive, right? You're just like, I did something good in the world. So what happens is that the ego is going to find some ways to take credit for that, right? So the worst ways that, you know, you just fall in these dreads, right? The drama, the realization of your limitations, the emptiness, the disorientation, and the spiraling, right? Something I just created, is understanding if it's a part of you or if it's all of you, right? Most oftentimes when it's all of you, it's coming from like true source of who you are. If it's a part of you, it's a little self, okay? So when you look at it, we're looking at the silly part of me that thinks it has control, right? Which is the ego, right? This is the child wounds that we have, and assuming so much, right? Instead of just, you know, understanding that there are things outside of ourselves, right? That we can perceive, but we shouldn't be able to accuse, right? Because it's just a part of you that believes that. So most oftentimes, this will stop you from moving to the next level, and we have to be able to give it some space for it to express itself, if that makes sense. So we're looking at, you know, the imposter syndrome, right? As a coach, you feel like your credibility is always questionable. When you're looking at your personalities, right? They become your personal reality. So getting out of these identities is very painful because you're so stuck in that, right? I have a couple clients that are just, you know, so stuck in being the martyr, right? Where you have like the struggle with the pent-up dissatisfaction and resentment because of the sense of worth, right? Is too tied to the opinions of others, right? So these individuals are constantly trying to sacrifice themselves. That, you know, like I sacrifice my love and my time and I'm never appreciated. That, okay? So when we look at the savior, we're looking at, right, these are individuals that are trying to fix others, right? And most oftentimes you start to see that they're the ones that need the most fixing, right? Feelings of inadequacy, right? Take time to be vulnerable, open enough to admit they need the same help and fixing, okay? So we look at the victim, right? They have no power. Nothing positive will ever happen to them, right? So they're always down and about. My aunt is like this, right? Very victim mentality. Then we have the hero, right? The struggle with the ego, the inflated view of importance, suffer from. These are individuals that are like your eldest children, right? People that take care of others, right? I feel like they're always in the need to make decisions for others. And when they're not in control, they just lose it. Right, so when they have no power, it definitely just turns out very badly. Then we look at the persecutor of the tyrants, right? They criticize, blame, they set strict limitations, controlling, rigid, authoritative, right? Authoritarian, yeah. And these individuals are just, they need full control, right? So it's like the complete, you know, evolution of like the hero, right? What is it? You either die the hero or see yourself to become the villain kind of thing. So, quote, yes. Caretaker and enabler, right? Suffer from codependency, facilitate and encourage. This happens a lot with people, right? They compromise their values. They let others just, because they love people so much, right? So they're just like very passive, sometimes even passive aggressive. And scapegoat, the ones that are the blamed, right? The mislabeled due to dysfunctional families. How could you allow this, right? So they have always had this mentality of like, it's always my fault. So basically they self-sabotage some way, somehow, where they blame others, and really what they're doing is blaming themselves. So they have this inferiority and self-loathing, trust issues, right? And then when you do your part to kind of recognize these things, they can disappear, right? They're just a part of you. These are just things that you've used to protect yourself because of the environment that you grew up in, right? The person, environment, transaction. You can provoke, evoke, or react to the environment, nature and nurture, right? So when we look at these goals being filtered through these identities, if you want to call them that, or complexes, whatever you want to call them, the only reason why you can discern whether the ego is taking hold is the guilt, right? The ego's goals come in between, right? And you have to see how obvious they are, right? When you are not satisfied, when you want more, when you need, right? It's not fulfilled, right? You can see that those that want to be deceived are going to be deceived, right? When they believe that this is what they want, and then they see that it's not what they actually want. Because where you're looking at is those that are just content with that. People will be manipulated because they want to be manipulated until they realize that that is really what they are trying to feed, if that makes sense. They feel as though, like you're reinforcing the identity. It justifies the means of being stuck in the situation that you're at and not taking responsibility for what you want. So once you make a decision, right, to choose to see things differently, to be shown truth, to be connected and still, so you can hear exactly what you must learn, right, and know so you can make your decision, then you can see through the smoke, right, the illusion of the smoke, because the ego is complex, right? Ego's complexity in the self, the higher self, spirit, is simplicity. So it should be very clear as to what you want. The things that are worthy and not worthy, right? Worth your time, not worth your time. That's when you start making decisions from your true self, okay? And it makes making a choice real easy. So once you start developing that trust within yourself, then you start trusting everything else, because now you're starting to understand what is real to you. And when the ego is trying to say, ooh, whatever, right? So you take that in consideration. You're like, okay, cool. I got it now. I understand that this is my small self. I was trying to speak. Let's give it some space, right? It's the silly part of me that thinks it has control, and there is no control, because the only control that I have is either I make the decision or I don't make the decision to see the love within myself, to take care of myself, to move towards loving myself even further, more profoundly.